healthcare and insurance. Skyrocketing healthcare and insurance costs. Extremely modest gains against chronic disease. Thousands die yearly due to drug reactions. What can be done? Thomas Edison is quoted as declaring, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but interest his patients in diet and nutrition, exercise, and the care of the human frame. He will teach them about the cause of all disease." The doctors of the future are here. Welcome to Phase 3 Wellness with your host, Keith Henry, ND, one of the doctors of the future.
Good afternoon and welcome to Phase 3 Wellness. Thank you for joining me today on this Sunday afternoon at 3:30. I'm Dr. Keith Henry and I'm a naturopath located here in the Orlando, Florida area. As normal, we have a very insightful show today. We will be following the same line, the Week in Natural News Review segment, then the Healing Food segment, then a Healing Herb segment. But in our first segment, we're going to be talking about I'll be dealing with 3 articles. I'll be analyzing 3 articles and discussing 3 articles which came out during the week in natural news. Many articles came out, but just chose 3 as I do every week to discuss. And in these 3 articles, we'll be discussing, the first one we'll be discussing how processed meats actually affect your mental well-being. And next we'll be discussing, analyzing an article on how exercise can actually help benefit your brain health. And finally, I'll be talking about how too much sitting can be detrimental as well to your brain health. Then we'll move on to our Healing Food segment. In the Healing Food segment, we will be discussing how the food artichoke can benefit you health-wise. And lastly, under the final segment is the Healing Herb segment. In the Healing Herb segment, we'll be talking about the herb catnip. It'll be a relatively short one, because last week on the Healing Herb, we spent a good amount of time. So we'll spend a good amount of time on the Week in Natural News Review as well as on the Artichoke, the Healing Food segment. Again, my name is Dr. Keith Henry. I'm located here with the practice of ministry in Orlando, Florida. I am a naturopathic doctor, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Our first again, like I said, our first article is entitled "Processed Meat Shown to Threaten Mental Well-Being." Now, again, if you have not listened before, what we do is we address in our Week in Natural News Review segment, we review and analyze maybe 2 or 3 articles that came out during the week that are important with respect to natural news. And so that is what we're doing today. And so let's address this first article. Again, it's called "Processed Meat Shown to Threaten Mental Well-Being." Now, this article is taken from naturalhealth365.com, and the article starts out by pointing out how psychiatric disorders are often made worse by an improper diet, which is correct. Actually, we've talked about that on the show before, that sometimes the diet alone can bring upon mental issues, psychosis, etc. But then when you combine that with just an overall, just overall not living an overall healthy lifestyle, that is definitely can contribute. And we've talked on the show before about the second brain and how what you eat goes down into the gut, and how the foods that you eat affect the gut, and thus there's a communication or relation between the brain up top and the brain, quote, second brain, end quote, in the second brain in the gut. Now this research cited in this article comes out of Johns Hopkins Medicine, and was found that it says now new research out of Johns Hopkins Medicine has found that cured and processed meats could cause mania, especially in persons who already have bipolar disorder. This study actually involved an analysis of over 1,000 or more than 1,000 people, some of who had psychiatric disorders and some who didn't. The researchers actually looked at the diets of the participants, and they found that those who frequently ate foods such as hot dogs, salami, jerky, and other processed meats, which contain nitrates, were prone to an abnormally elevated mood state. This manic state, they called it, was characterized by unfounded euphoria, hyperactivity, and persistent insomnia. So those were some of the manic, what they call a manic state, in these persons who frequently ate hot dogs, salami, jerky, and other processed meats. The study found further that persons hospitalized for manic episodes were over 3 times more likely to have eaten nitrate-cured meats than those who never had a serious psychiatric disorder. The findings were published in the July 18th issue of Molecular Psychiatry. So that's interesting that those people who found to be commonly eating these meats with these nitrates in them were actually having altered mental conditions. The article went on to say further that this recent study confirms that consuming certain foods as well as gut bacteria composition could play a prominent role in many psychiatric conditions. The correlation between nitrates and mania was also corroborated in a study on rats. The article pointed out further. It says that in that study, when rats were fed a similar ratio of food with nitrates as a human might consume, it was found that their gut bacteria showed different patterns than rats not fed these nitrate-based foods. The animals also showed differences in their brains that resemble bipolar disorder. Now, the article says further that conventionally speaking, the cause of many psychiatric disorders remain a, quote, mystery. And while genes and many and family history may be factors, researchers have been exploring environmental factors, including diet, to see if it plays a role. So again, there's been a lot of information that's come out, and I think it's pretty clear that diet plays a role, and it plays a significant role. Whatever you put in your mouth affects the entire body, and if you're putting in these foods, these nitrate-laced foods, especially on a consistent basis, especially given all of the other unhealthy lifestyle choices that are often also accompanied the eating of these foods, you have no choice but to have some type of mental effect. It has no choice but to have some type of mental effect upon us. The article pointed out further how this new research adds to the evidence that certain diets can actually potentially affect the amounts of bacteria in the gut and can contribute to mania as well as other disorders that affect the brain. It says manic states can be dangerous due to a higher likelihood of delusional thinking and risky, dangerous behavior. The article said further that manic states can last weeks or months and in many cases require hospitalization, and bipolar disorder affects around 1 to 3% of the population. So that is a significant number of people that are affected by bipolar disorder and some of these other issues that can be caused by that can be caused in the brain. So this is something that if you've listened to Phase 3 Wellness podcast and radio show before, that you would be definitely familiar with, because this is something that we've talked on here before about. We've talked about how this actually can affect eating can affect your gut, and eventually can affect your brain, et cetera, and thus your mind, your thoughts. This article went on to say further, talking about these nitrates, how they've been used as a cured meat preservative for decades, and in recent years, cured meats have been linked with neurodegenerative diseases as well as some cancers. They went on to say that this recent assessment now clearly connects them with the dangerously elevated mood states of mania. Some researchers have also found a correlation between gut bacteria composition and brain health, further corroborating the findings. Again, the evidence is accumulating, showing that if you're eating these meats, these nitrate-laced meats, just eating meats in itself poses some risk, significant risk. But then when you have these highly processed foods, it's like putting it on steroids. And the article pointed out further that no doubt the research we've highlighted only adds to the long list of health concerns about most processed foods. Naturally, due to these unwanted risks, it's always best to eat organic foods whenever possible. And they go on to point out how we should think of healthy eating as an insurance policy. And I agree with that. our healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, overall, they are an insurance policy because by the way that we function, uh, the way that we live every day, day in and day out, those things that we do consistently, whether for health or against health, they will have the final result for good or for bad. And again, you're listening to Phase 3 Wellness. This is Dr. Keith Henry, ND, and we're going to go over to our next article now. We're still in our Week in Natural News Review segment. We go over to our next article, which is from naturalnews.com, and it's entitled Exercise Can Save Your Life, especially when it comes to brain health. And this article talked about a study from Southwestern Medical Center that found that regular exercise is linked to increased brain health, and it also lowers your chances of getting the debilitating disease of Alzheimer's. In this particular study, which was published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, the medical team suggested that cardiorespiratory health can actually help boost the quality of white matter in your brain, which can help improve the brain function of people with mild cognitive impairment. So basically, essentially what the article pointed out is that exercise can help prevent dementia and also ultimately Alzheimer's. And quoting Dr. Ken Ding, one of the authors of the study, he says this research supports this hypothesis that improving people's fitness may improve their brain health and slow down the aging process. Researchers primarily focused in this particular study on brain tissue called the white matter, which is a substance made up of millions of bundled nerves that are used neurons to send signals to one another. So for the study, researchers tapped older patients who exhibited mild cognitive impairment, such as memory loss, which is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Remember, we talked about Alzheimer's a couple of weeks ago, but Alzheimer's is considered the sixth leading cause of death in the United States, and is in the most common form of dementia. And the estimates also vary, but they think that at least 5 million people may have Alzheimer's disease in the U.S. alone. And like other forms of dementia, the telltale signs of Alzheimer's involve the breakdown of cognitive function, which can result in memory loss, confusion, and also difficulty completing tasks, etc. But in this particular study that we're talking about, researchers involved 81 participants for the trials, which included people with normal brain function and those that displayed mild cognitive impairment. They evaluated an individual's cardiorespiratory fitness with a formula called maximal oxygen uptake, and brain imaging was utilized to study the functionality of the white matter in each of the participants. Not only that, memory and cognitive tests were provided to evaluate the brain function. This was done, according to the article, so that researchers can study the link between exercise, brain health, and cognition. The researchers then concluded that higher levels of cardiorespiratory fitness are actually linked with better white matter integrity, which is connected to improved brain function. So according to the findings, maximum oxygen uptake positively affected the quality of the white matter fiber in the brain. The current studies, current results of the study was built on previous research done by the team on Alzheimer's, the authors admit that a lot of variables remain to unlock the mysteries of the neurodegenerative condition. So, but nevertheless, the information that came out of the study, we find that it's important that older adults and even younger adults, because remember, as I said before, you lay the foundation. Even though it's good to be healthy now, and what you do now is going to give you good health now, but you lay the foundation for later years in your younger years. So if you spend your younger years, partying, not taking care of your body, you're laying the foundation for sickness and disease as you get older. Not only that, in older people, 50, 60 and older, they still need to exercise. But we need to understand also that whenever we exercise, the things are good like gardening, etc. But whatever exercise you're doing, you want to have activity and movement that you're going to get just from things like gardening, cleaning the house, etc. But when you also that activity is good, but what you also need to combine with that exercise, and exercise needs to include certain factors. And certain factors include activities that you involve yourself in. They need to increase your breathing as well as your heart rate. That's going to be significant exercise. Your exercise also needs to include endurance or aerobic activities, with walking, swimming, biking, jogging if you can. It must also make your muscles stronger, so you can use a resistance band or lift weights to help build strength. They should also include balancing. Your exercise should also include balancing to help you prevent falls as well as improve your flexibility. So again, some people say, well, I walk here and I walk there and I do exercise here and I garden. That's good. But you need to be able, your exercise, as I just pointed out, it needs to increase your heart rate, etc. And some of these include endurance, jogging, walking, and you also need to include some resistance exercises like weights or something of that nature to really get the full benefit of exercise. This is what we talked about before. It's it's crucially important that you include these things, and this is consistent with what you hear me talk about on here over and over and over again. If you've listened, the laws of health, they are trust in the Creator, sunshine, exercise, water, air, rest, diet, and self-control or temperance. Those are the general laws, and then underneath each one, there are subsections. For instance, under the subsection of exercise, we talk about how often you should exercise. We talk about how exercise prevents diseases, what type of exercise you should do, how often, with the intensity, the benefits of exercise. Again, and then under water, it's the same thing. You have the general health law of water, but then there's how much water do you drink, how to use it for hydrotherapy purposes, how do you use it for blood pressure, how to use it for diabetes, just in general. So remember, those 8 laws of health that I always talk about, they cannot be improved upon, but they are 8 essential principles that must be followed if we would have good or great health. Now, our third and final article in our Week in Natural News segment, which is the segment that we're in now. You are listening to Phase 3 Wellness. I'm Dr. Keith Henry, and our final segment, or the final article for this segment that we're analyzing, is an article from Mercola.com. This is entitled "Sit Less Now or Risk Not Walking Later," and it's talking about. I addressed this some years ago when this initial study first came out, but it's again something that we need to address again in terms of how much we sit. And a lot of people sit a lot, and it can actually accelerate sickness and death. So just a story at a glance, this article points out how prolonged sitting, just in summary, promotes multiple challenging health conditions, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoarthritis, certain cancers, as well as lower back pain. Also, recent research demonstrates that watching television for extended periods may increase your risk for reduced mobility as you age, and this may lead to a loss of your independence. And also, finally, we're going to go and look into a little bit more detail of this particular article. Again, it was from Dr. Mercola.com. Mercola.com came out today, actually. And the article points out how there's a large number of studies that have demonstrated the health challenges that you face when you sit for long hours each day. They point out how inactivity promotes the development of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and obesity, to name just a few of the chronic conditions that we see being associated in our society with a sedentary lifestyle. The article points out how the average American working in the office easily sits between 12 to 15 hours each day. It points out how even a strong workout in the morning cannot undo the damage to your body when you sit behind a desk for 8 hours. So imagine that, for sitting down, and this has been established by studies. So this is not something really that new. It came out of this research came out a few years back, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But we've always talked about the health law of exercise, and so think about sitting down. Most people don't exercise. I talk to some people who say, "Oh, I don't exercise," and I don't do anything after I finish working. I go home and I sit down in front of the television, or I go to sleep or eat a big meal. This is definitely signing a death certificate for the future. The article pointed out further, to avoid much of the damage created from excessive sitting, it's important to sit less than 3 hours a day. There was a study analyzed, taking data from 54 countries, and they found that sitting less increased life expectancy, and sitting less than 3 hours each day was the optimal number to achieve. The lead author of the study acknowledges that despite a growing body of strong scientific evidence, demonstrating the dangers of too much sitting, it's difficult to get people to make changes. So they also pointed out in the article how long commutes to and from work, labor-saving devices, and a lack of support for active lifestyle contribute to this growing problem. And the article pointed out a recent study actually, where scientists have now demonstrated how sitting for long periods of time is also an independent risk factor for poor mobility, as Page. For that alone, that's sitting for long periods of time, they pointed out, is an independent risk factor of poor mobility, or the ability to get around as you get older. A lot of times people think in their 20s and their 30s that, oh, I'm okay, but it's interesting now that because of the disregard for a healthy lifestyle, even 30 and 20-year-olds are starting to be stricken down or afflicted, if you will, with some of these diseases that before only 50 and 60-year-old people were seeing. Now, in terms of this pointing out how the article pointing out how sitting increases risk of immobility as you age, it's interesting that it cites studies supporting using a consistent exercise routine to help your metabolism reduce your risk of diabetes, but also help reduce the likelihood that you will be immobile as you get older, be confined to a wheelchair. We see many people these days riding around in those scooters. They're for the most part, they're immobile without the help of these scooters or wheelchairs or etc. This article pointed out further how studies support using a consistent exercise routine to help improve your metabolism can reduce your risk of diabetes as well as certain cancers. And also to help this exercise can also help you maintain, as we talked about before, a healthy weight as well as improving your cardiovascular health. The article said further that further research demonstrates that even when you engage in regular exercise, it may not be enough to offset the disadvantages to your health from too much sitting. So again, the studies point out that you may have a vigorous exercise in the morning before you go into work, or you may do vigorous exercise rather in the morning before you go into work. But if you go into work and you sit down for pretty much 8 hours the whole day, that's not going to be enough to undo the damage from that. What should you do then? Ideal is, if you're at work, it's a good idea to stand up for a couple of minutes every 15 minutes, or stand up every 15 minutes, walk around for a minute or two, and then come back and work again. Or every 15 to 20 minutes. That's ideal. That would actually help. And then also still do your exercises. Being immobile or being inactive is it's not going to work if you expect to have decent health going forward. They also talk about the amount of time that people sit and watch television. They talked about how in one research study that was led by Loretta DiPietro, PhD, department chair in exercise at the Milken Institute School of Public Health. This particular study found that increasing that inactivity as you age may also reduce your ability to get around and remain mobile. During the study, the researchers examined data from people aged 50 to 71 across 8 to 10 years from a large NIH AARP diet and health study that started with all healthy participants between 1995 and 1996. The researchers evaluated recordings of how much time these people watched television, how much time they gardened, how much time they did housework, how much time they exercised or engaged in other physical activity during their study period. The results, which the article pointed out, was not too surprising, as they found that those who were the most active, sitting less than 6 hours each day, were the least disabled, and those who were least active, getting less than 3 hours of activity a week, were the most disabled. The researchers concluded that reduction of sedentary time combined with increased physical activity may be necessary to maintain function in older age. So basically, to sit less and move around more is essential to having health as we age. They pointed out also that one piece of information that came out of the analysis of the data in this study was that greater TV time was significantly related to increased disability within all levels of physical activity. They pointed out that after the age of 50, the results from the study suggest that prolonged sitting, especially in the evening hours in front of a television, is particularly, quote, particularly hazardous, end quote. DiPietro, the lead doctor of the study, believes that TV viewing may be specifically problematic as it is usually not broken up with short bouts of physical activity as compared to sitting at your desk in the day. When once you get up to change channels on television, you don't. It was once a time rather that people had to get up to change channel on television, but now you have the remote control or you have Netflix. You don't need to sit through the ads now. So it's a lot of times when there would be an ad, people would say, "Oh, when the commercial comes, I'm going to go in here and go here." So at least they were getting up. But now with Netflix and Hulu and the streaming and YouTube, you can just sit for hours and hours. People say, well, "I'm going to binge watch some for the entire weekend," and they may, who knows how many times they may get up doing a binge watching the Game of Thrones or some other popular television show that they're watching, and who knows how many hours that they sit before moving. Especially if they bring their food in and just sit and watch. It could be hours and hours and hours and hours. That's extremely detrimental. The researchers also found that those who sat in front of the televisions for several hours in combination with less than 3 hours of physical activity each week experienced an acceleration of risk for harmful health effects. They also determined that those who experienced any level of physical activity but also sat for increasing hours in front of a screen watching TV had an increased likelihood of a walking disability. Movement, motion, exercise is crucial. Now, in closing out this article from Mercola.com, which will also close out this segment, and it went a little long, which I knew it would because we would cut some of the time out of the Healing Herb segment because we spent a lot of time in the Healing Herb segment last week. But still, I thought this is very important for us to know. It's very important that some of the things that are associated with sedentary behaviors in the real world context. The health challenges, as this article pointed out, resulting from sitting for prolonged periods are related to sedentary behavior. And while sitting is the most prevalent form of sedentary behavior, it isn't the only one. The article pointed out how any activity during which you exert very little energy is considered sedentary behavior. So again, don't think if just because you're sitting down or you're not sitting down that you don't have that you're not engaging in sedentary behavior. But if you're involved in something that does not require any or very little physical output, that's also can be considered sedentary behavior. The article pointed out how the scientific community has coined the term sitting disease to refer to metabolic syndrome and other ill effects of a sedentary life. The medical community does not use this as a diagnosis, however. The results of sitting prolonged periods may include a few things, and this is interesting. The article went on to point out here are some of the things that prolonged sitting may bring on. Number one, death. There was a study, the article points out, of over 123,000 people. And in this study, researchers found women who sat for 6 hours or more each day had a 94% increased risk of death from all causes during the study period than women who sat for 3 hours or less. Men who were inactive and sat for 6 hours or more were 48% more likely to die than men who were more active. That's astonishing. So we can shorten or lengthen our life in terms of hours by how much we sit down without moving. Second one would be obesity. It pointed out how a study of 50,000 women over 6 years found that every 2-hour increase in viewing television a day resulted in a 23% jump in risk of obesity, and for every additional hour women spent sitting at work without getting up resulted in an additional 5% risk of obesity. So again, inactivity, result, obesity. Next, there was metabolic syndrome. Absence of muscle contraction during extended periods of time reduces your ability to metabolize and process carbohydrates, leading to the chief risk factors for insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Number 3, cancer. A meta-analysis of 47 studies found an increasing amount of inactivity or sedentary behavior resulted in a higher risk for cancer and an increased risk of death from their diagnosis. Because remember, one of the things you've heard me say before is that the secret to good health is circulation, good circulation. And one of the things that exercise and movement does is it helps circulation. With just sitting hours and hours and hours and hours on end, and you're not getting up and moving about, the circulation is going to be hindered, the overall health is going to be hindered, and the body is going to be open to developing another disease or abnormality. Finally, lower back pain. Sitting for long hours, long periods of time, places added strain on your lower back. It reduces your core strength and it reduces circulation to the small muscles in your lower back, all leading to an increased risk of back pain. That's not to mention the risk increase the article pointed out with respect to osteoarthritis, uh, loss of mobility, and with that becomes loss of independence as we age. So again, we need to be on moving. You can get up from your computer or your job, just to get up every 15 minutes for a couple of minutes, move around, move around. They have now these desks where you can stand while you're working. It is actually a life, literally a life or death matter measured in hours, but those hours can accumulate and into days, and those days can accumulate into weeks, those weeks into months into years, which translate into years being knocked off of our lives simply because we're not moving around, we're engaging in sedentary lifestyles. And it's not that many people don't know better, it's just that we don't do. So I want to encourage you to do what you know. Your life depends on it. I'm Dr. Keith Henry. You are listening to the Phase 3 Wellness Podcast. This is Sunday afternoon. I'd like to thank you for listening. That will conclude our first segment, the Week in Natural News Review segment. Now we'll go over to our next segment, which is the Healing Food segment. If you haven't listened before, the Healing Food segment is the segment that we pick a food each week, a fruit or a vegetable, and we basically we look at some of the health benefits of that food, or that fruit or that vegetable, or that nut. And today we're talking about artichokes. They are a very versatile food, and although they're considered a vegetable, they are actually a variety of thistle. So for nutritional purposes, they are primarily consumed due to their associated benefits of protecting against various forms of cancer. They actually help boost the immune system. They help lower cholesterol, and they also protect against diseases such as diabetes, osteoporosis, etc. So artichokes, some people say, well, I don't like artichokes, but we're not here actually to talk about whether or not we like them, like their taste or not. We're just here in this particular segment to talk about their benefits. Now let's look at some of the nutritional value of artichokes. They are low in saturated fats and as well as cholesterol, but they are a rich source of fiber, of vitamins and as well as minerals. They contain such vitamins as vitamin C. They have thiamine, riboflavin. They have niacin. They have folate. They have vitamin B6, B12, vitamin A. They have vitamin E, vitamin D, and vitamin K. Not only do they have vitamins, they also have minerals. They contain minerals such as calcium. They have iron. They have zinc. They have sodium. They have potassium. They have manganese. They have phosphorus, and they also have zinc. So they are loaded. In fact, according to the USDA, artichokes have the highest antioxidant levels out of all vegetables. Again, they're considered a vegetable, they're actually a thistle, but for the purposes of this discussion, we'll talk about them in the context of being a vegetable. They actually have according to the USDA, as I just said, have the highest antioxidant level out of all vegetables. And this is according to a study done by the USDA. And out of 1,000 plants of different types of food, they rank 7th in antioxidant content. And so interesting, so you can see that artichokes, when it comes to nutrition, it could be said that they are no joke. Now, they have, again, antioxidants, like they have polyphenols, that I mentioned last week, quercetin. They also have high levels of vitamin C, vitamin C is a very well-known antioxidant. It's found in significant levels in artichokes. And think about it, vitamin C has been shown, I've talked about vitamin C on here many, many times. Vitamin C has been shown to actually discourage conditions like fibrosis and mucositis, and also to reduce the chances of breast cancer developing. There actually have been studies that have also shown that the extract from artichoke leaves can be used to induce cell death as well as cell proliferation when injected into cancerous masses, and it can actually reduce the chances for developing prostate cancer as well, breast cancer, and leukemia. So artichoke extract, again, the studies have shown that the extract from the leaves can be used to induce cell death as well as cell proliferation, and so it is a monster against cancer, because the flavonoids in artichokes have been found to reduce chances of breast cancer. So you have vitamin C, it's high in vitamin C, high in flavonoids, quercetin, and etc. Now, not only does it have significant ability to fight cancer, artichokes also have significant abilities at fighting heart disease and heart issues. So there's certain ingredients in the leaves of artichoke that have been found to reduce the levels of LDL and increase the levels of HDL, or the omega-3 fatty acids in the body. So again, in dealing with the cholesterol levels, it decreases LDL, increases HDL, and basically helps overall with your cardiovascular health. Again, it's also been found associated with being able to help with regulating your blood pressure. Why is that? Because artichokes are high in potassium. And potassium is an essential mineral that has impact on numerous organ systems throughout your body, but potassium specifically helps to neutralize the effects of excess sodium, which is notorious for increasing blood pressure in some people. Artichokes, therefore, can act as vasodilators, or actually increases causes the blood vessels to dilate. And as a result, they are particularly useful for those already taking hypertension medicine to prevent the effects of potassium deficiency. Diabetics are also encouraged to eat artichokes to prevent the complications associated with blood pressure and that disease. It's interesting, as you heard me say before, typically whenever you develop hypertension or diabetes or high cholesterol, normally if you develop one, the other two are not far behind. And so artichoke can actually help all three. And so again, artichoke is a very, very, very healthy food that we're discussing today. And again, there's many, many things that it's one of those healing foods rather that the Creator has given us. And as we've been talking about, it has so many health benefits that if we would eat foods like artichokes, which are real foods instead of junk foods, we would not. Many of the diseases that we watch the commercials on television, the pharmaceutical commercials, when they say, "Oh, take this drug for this and take that drug for this," many of these diseases would not even be in existence, would not even be a problem if we would eat. If we would let our food be our medicine and our medicine be our food. And now another benefit of artichoke is that if you look back in history, they've used as liver tonics for centuries. But the exact mechanism of their impact was never fully understood. Until our time, modern science now can actually look, because of research, they can kind of look into why artichokes have such a great benefit for the liver. Reason being, because as I spoke earlier, they have this. It's very high in antioxidant, and two of the main antioxidants found in artichokes. One I want to speak of specifically is silymarin, which is also found in milk thistle. And milk thistle is known to be a very beneficial herb for the liver. And so there's actually two major antioxidants, that being one, and both of them have been shown to improve the overall health of the liver by reducing the presence of toxins and facilitating their elimination from the liver as well as from the body. So some studies have even shown these antioxidants are to actually to promote regrowth and repair of damaged liver cells. So again, it is definitely a godsend for those who have a number of issues that can benefit. It's a literal application of allowing your food to be your medicine. Artichokes, as a result of being very high, a very high source rather of dietary fiber, it also helps add bulk to the stool or to the intestines, and it adds bulk to the food you eat, which helps you to keep your bowel movements regular and decreases symptoms of constipation. as fiber can reduce chances of a variety of stomach and intestinal cancers as well. So again, it's high in fiber as well. And so again, it is just an overall magnificent food. And there's some other benefits from artichokes. They've been used to help soothe inflamed gallbladders, and can also help solve the common problem of a blocked duct in the gallbladder, thereby allowing the gallbladder to return to normal function. Also, there's also been some studies. There's been some light and information how artichokes can actually help prevent women have healthy, normally formed children. The high levels of folic acid found in artichokes can actually help prevent neural tube defects from occurring in newborns. Interesting. A lot of women would take multivitamins or prenatal vitamins, which is nothing wrong with that. But think about also including and in those prenatal vitamins, you will often see folic acid or folate, which is a better form of it. But if you're getting it in the form inside of the artichoke, you're going to get it just how the Creator intended. It's going to have even more benefits, but you're eating it with all of the other benefits, and it will work synergistically throughout the body. Finally, artichokes are one of the best foods on the market for acquiring, as I pointed out earlier, vitamins and minerals like magnesium, phosphorus, and manganese. And these minerals are essentially parts of increasing bone health and your bone density, especially for women as they get older. And it can also, and because it does that, it can actually help prevent osteoporosis. So again, we're talking about artichoke, and we're in the healing food segment. I'm Dr. Keith Henry on the Phase 3 Wellness Podcast, and just talking about how some of the many. I could take this whole show just to talk about the benefits of artichoke. It's one of the most nutrition dense foods that we've talked about. The has the most antioxidants of any vegetable, and it's a vasodilator. It helps nutrients. It has vitamins. It has minerals. It's just a very, very beneficial food that the Creator has given us, and He's helping us to understand why our food should be our medicine and our medicine should be our food. Again, whenever you get a chance, get a hold of some artichokes. If you don't like them, maybe you want to start taking some artichoke extracts. Of course, it's always better to eat foods in their most natural state, unless you already have a deficiency and you need to take a supplement, and you need to have the supplements in a concentrated form. Then it can be necessary to take a supplement for that particular food in general to bring your levels up. But generally speaking, if we eat healthy, notwithstanding some of the things that they're doing to the food, if we try to eat healthy and have a healthy lifestyle, trust in the Creator, that helps deal with our stress and distress. Get out into the sunshine and the fresh air. Get exercise out in the fresh air and the sunshine. Eat a healthy diet. Of course, I advocate a plant-based diet, which I believe is the ultimate diet. It's the diet that was given from the Creator in the beginning. I think it is the ultimate diet. There's been many studies that have actually also established that the healthiest people among us are those who eat a plant-based, also called a vegan diet. So again, just if you eat a varied diet of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains, if you exercise, if you trust in the Creator, that helps with your stress. If you get out in the sunshine and get fresh air, exercise in the fresh air and the sunshine, drink plenty of water, get plenty of rest, the likelihood that you will develop these sicknesses and diseases go way down. And your quality of life thereby goes way up. And as you heard me say before, health is a great blessing. And, oftentimes we don't realize how great a blessing it is until we lose it or we get sick. And then it's brought to our memory rather quickly just how important our health is. So again, this is Dr. Keith Henry on the Phase 3 Wellness Podcast. We are going to pivot over to our final segment now. Our final segment is the Healing Herb segment. If you're listening in and you didn't join the show in the beginning, The entire show will be available probably about 15 minutes after the segment closes out. It will be available to re-listen to, download, share, wherever you want. It'll also be available on many different platforms. So now we're going to pivot over to our final segment, the Healing Herb segment. Again, this is Phase 3 Wellness Podcast with Dr. Keith Henry. I'm a naturopath located in right outside in Orlando. My office is likely in Orlando, Florida. And so, again, I want to thank you for listening. Let's pivot over to our final segment, Healing Herb segment. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the herb catnip. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I just want to talk a little bit about it. Now, I want to say this from the beginning. It is supposed to produce euphoric feelings when smoked. And again, I don't advocate smoking any herbs. I just don't. But it is supposed to produce euphoric feelings when smoked. However, the headache that follows provides a substantial deterrent to its abuse. So you're going to get a headache if you smoke it. We're not talking about smoking it here. In here, we're talking about taking it, either in a tea format or in a capsule format or extract, but we're not talking about smoking it. Catnip oil, or catnip in general, you probably wonder why they call it catnip. It's interesting that the effect that it has on cats. It has an interesting effect on cats, but that's another story. It actually possesses an essential oil in it naturally, and similar to some of the oils found that are chemically similar to those found in valerian root. Valerian, we've talked about that on here before. I call it God's Valium. Valerian root has the ability to relax the nervous system, or they call this to relax, to help with stress. Catnip has one of the has a chemically similar substance within it, and it works as a sedative in humans, and it's actually been used to treat traditionally in traditional herbology. It's been used to treat insomnia, indigestion, nervousness, amenorrhea, flatulence or gas, coughs, colds, and fevers. It's been used to treat influenza. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But catnip extracts, especially when used in conjunction with fennel oil, actually can provide a safe and effective means for eliminating the effects of colic in young children. So think about that for a second. Catnip extracts, when combined with fennel oil, have been used as effectively for eliminating the effects of colic in children. Again, it has a sedative effect. Sometimes people have drank catnip tea as a herbal tea just before bedtime to help them relax and go to sleep. Like I said earlier, it's been used for insomnia. Now let's talk about some of the nutritional profile of catnip. Now it has a lot of different nutrients in it, but I just want to point out the ones that is highest in. It's very high in chromium. It's very high in iron. It's very high in manganese. It's very high in potassium. And it's very high in selenium. Very high in those. There's some others that it's just high in, but I just want to hit those. We don't have time to go into everything. But it also, again, interestingly enough, it has average amounts of vitamin A and vitamin C. So again, it's very high again in chromium. It's very high in iron. It's very high in manganese, and it's very high in potassium and selenium. So it has those minerals in it. Very high in mineral and iron, vitamin and mineral content is very high in. So again, catnip it has some interesting benefits. Again, primarily it's used as a sedative for human beings, and it's also been used as an influenza. I mentioned how it's been used to treat colds, etc., but it's even been used in treating influenza. And what people have done when they're treating influenza, they've used it in teas, and it's been used in traditional herbal medicine to quell not only influenza but also digestive disturbances, especially when you have those digestive disturbances accompanied or in combination or cause when you have flu or asthma. Because what happens, the catnip actually has the ability to stimulate gastric secretion. So this aids the movement of food and infection out of the digestive tract while relaxing tight muscles and generally including relaxation because it's a sedative. There's also been some laboratory research that has confirmed that catnip is also antimicrobial. So again, it's one of those herbs that's antimicrobial. It helps with the gastrointestinal tract. It's a sedative. So again, it has many benefits. Again, as I mentioned before, some people have used it to treat insomnia. It can be actually very potent for that if you take it in a tea. It can be a very potent sleep inducer. In fact, it's actually often used to help children to sleep or at the very least settle down because it calms them down. So, and it's unlike, say, a sleeping pill. It doesn't leave you feeling drugged out the next day. So again, catnip can be a very potent sleep inducer if you're suffering from insomnia. Now, also, if you've been suffering from long-term or chronic insomnia, you want to stop and look at any underlying causes why you are suffering from insomnia. You may have adrenal fatigue or exhaustion or some other issue you may be experiencing, which is causing the insomnia. But to be able to get to sleep, it is used to help with insomnia. And again, it's primarily used as a tea, sometimes as an extract. But it's again, it can be used, as I mentioned, to help children with colic when combined with fennel oil, etc. So again, as I said before, I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on catnip. It's pretty straightforward type herb. It's actually, I want to mention too, there's a couple of things that it's been used for. The herbal healing, the encyclopedia, the prescription for herbal healing points out that, let me find that and read it for you. It says, catnip, best known for its peculiar attractiveness to cats, is a carminative, an agent that helps to expel gas and gastric stimulant in humans. In Central Europe, it is a traditional medicine for preventing hives in children. Catnip lowers fever and reduces the eruption of measles and chickenpox. Catnip enemas, when used to reduce fever, are safe for children. And so again, outside of that's the quote from that's from a prescription for herbal healing. So again, there's some of the other benefits outside of the one that I mentioned already with respect to catnip. It's been used for to help bring down fevers and reduces the eruption of measles and chickenpox. And when used as an enema, when used to reduce fever, can bring down fevers in children as opposed to giving them children's Tylenol and things of that nature. You use things like catnip, and there's a couple of chickweed has also been used. Chickweed enema can also be used, but mainly catnip is very beneficial to help bring down fevers in children. This is Dr. Keith Henry. You have been listening to the Phase 3 Wellness Podcast. I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to remind you to join me again next Sunday. Again, if you're listening and you are not able to catch this this podcast from the beginning, I highly recommend that you do so. It'll be available, like I said, maybe about 15 minutes after the program is done. It'll be available on demand. You can listen anytime, day or night. Be sure to join me here again next week on Phase 3 Wellness. Share this episode with your friends. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, wherever. We post it on those platforms. But again, the more people hear this information, the more you will be empowered and the more you will be blessed by the Creator with that. Again, thank you for listening, and until next week, God bless.